Let's go to question number 2. Dear Mr. Stew, I'm writing to seek your professional advice as a child therapist. My son has recently been exhibiting behavior that concerns me deeply. He seems to constantly argue with me and refuses to listen to my instructions or requests. Just the other day, I asked him to clean up his toys before dinner, and he started arguing with me about why he shouldn't have to do it. It escalated into a full-blown argument where we both ended up frustrated and upset. As a parent, I want to create a loving and respectful relationship with my child, but I'm struggling with this constant arguing. What can I do when my child won't stop arguing with me? How can I effectively communicate with him without getting into arguments? Your help would be greatly appreciated. Sincerely, a concerned parent. Well, thank you so much for this question. And this is another one that comes up all the time. Arguments with kids. And arguments with kids, especially when you're in the middle of one, can seem so pointless, so useless. And that's because they are. Arguments with children are just unnecessary. The first thing to remember is that you don't have to prove to your child that you are the one in charge. Or if you're a teacher or a child caregiver, you don't have to prove to the kids that you are the one who's in charge. You are the one who's in charge. Now, how well you do this whole being in charge thing, that's a whole other question. But you don't have to prove to the child, and the child does not have to verbally acknowledge that you win. My first tip in arguments with children is to remember that it takes two people to argue, and this argument can be over anytime you want it to be by you just ending the argument, refusing to argue. Just because a child doesn't verbally acknowledge that you are the one in charge, or the child doesn't verbally acknowledge that you get to make the decision, doesn't mean that it's not true that you are the one in charge and you are the one who gets to make the decision. So if you are arguing back and forth and going on and on and on, and you realize the only thing that we're arguing about is the fact that they won't acknowledge my authority, then it's time to end the argument. And you can end the argument by simply saying, I'm done discussing this. And if they continue, you just say back again, I'm done discussing this. And if they continue to try to argue, you can say back to them, I'm done discussing this. And maybe they start to say even more intense things, or they start to bring up things from the past, or they start to just mesh it all together because now they're frustrated that you won't continue the conversation. You look back at them and you say, I'm done discussing this. It takes two people to argue. So if you find yourself frustrated that you are getting into arguments with your child, stop arguing. They don't have to acknowledge the truth for it to be the truth. You are the one in charge. You are the one who gets to make the decisions, whether they acknowledge that or not. So that's the first thing. You can end the argument anytime you want to. And the second is what I alluded to, but now let me name it for you. It's called the broken record method. A lot of times arguments go into feeding into content, which I talked about in the first question I answered today. But that feeding into content where it starts as a discussion about one thing, and then this person brings up something unrelated that happened in the past, and now we're arguing about that, and then it spirals into all this chaotic stuff. You can minimize that or eliminate it altogether by using this method called the broken record method. And all it is just continuing to repeat the same thing over and over and over like a broken record. I used the example of I'm done discussing this. You can just say that continuously, and maybe the child even escalates the things that they are saying, or they are escalating even how hateful or hurtful they are being with their speech. That's okay. Just continue to repeat back that broken record. You can address that speech behavior at another time, but right now needs to remain about what the discussion started about, not spiraling into more and more things. You can decrease that spiraling by using the broken record method. I'm done discussing this. Or you can say, I know you're really frustrated, but that's my answer. I know you're really frustrated, but that's my answer. Oh, and I hate you, and you are the worst. And I know you're really frustrated, but that's my answer. And you just say it plainly. You don't start yelling it. You don't start screaming it. It doesn't need to turn into more of a thing. You just continue to say that same phrase over and over and over again. And what that signals to the child is, this is not a discussion. This is not going to change based on how long we talk. I am done. I've made the decision. That's it. And you can just keep repeating that same phrase, and they'll even catch on, and they'll start to say, you only say that one stupid thing. And I know you're really upset right now, but I've made my decision. I know you're really upset right now, but I've made my decision. Or I'm done discussing this. I'm done discussing this for now. I'm done discussing this for now. And you're the worst, and I'm done discussing this for now. And that's it. Just continue to say that, and it tells the child, this is not a negotiation. This is not even a discussion. I've made my choice. We're not going to argue about it, because arguing about it would be pointless, because it's not going to change my mind. I'm done discussing this right now. If you can do those two things, if you can remember that you get to end the argument whenever you want, and it takes two people to argue. It is not your child arguing with you. It is the two of you in an argument. Remember that. And then the second thing is, keep using that broken record method. Stay calm while you use the broken record method. And then they'll start to see the arguments aren't really worth anything, because nothing's going to change.